This past weekend, Mortal Kombat debuted on HBO Max and in theaters. So today we're going to stop and rank the 20th highest grossing video game movies, plus Mortal Kombat, from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place. Consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the 20th highest grossing video game movies of all time. My list isn't the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place is Resident Evil Retribution. This to me is just bottom of the barrel Resident Evil stuff. There's plenty of the slow-mo action, deeper mythology, but none of it's any good. Right off the bat, it starts off with this action sequence that just undermines all of the victories and successes of the previous film.
But why?
And then it puts Alice in this lab where there's all these levels that gives them an excuse to bring back all of the characters from the previous movies that got killed off. It just feels like a bunch of cheap gimmicks to try and recapture what worked before, but without earning any of it. And even as you get to the end of the film, you're like, okay, they're just teasing and setting up what's actually the final battle in all of this. So this is not a movie I enjoy. It's just tedious Resident Evil stuff. Coming in at number 21 is Resident Evil Extinction. This is a little bit like Resident Evil plus Mad Max plus Day of the Dead, but not as good as any of the films previously mentioned. It's a series of events that happen in chronological order, but there's not like a clear story here. It's just Alice out in the world doing more things. There's not like a clear objective that they're trying to accomplish, just her trying to survive. And they've given her all of these over-the-top powers as if that makes her more interesting, but it makes her less interesting because she's less vulnerable. And then they kill off some of the characters that are actually likable and interesting. So a movie that this is to me is where the franchise just lost me. Bringing us into the top 20 is Hitman 2007. This is a movie I always expect to like more than I actually enjoy it. I like Timothy Olyphant as an actor, and I like Hitman movies. Put the two together, you should have a winning formula for me. But it doesn't actually play out that way. A big part of the problem is that the lead character is utterly devoid of charm or charisma or any redeeming qualities.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
And he's not trying to win anyone over, and it's not like he has a big arc by the end of the film. So he's like throwing the woman he's trying to save into the trunk of a car, being rude to her. He's killing police officers left and right who aren't actually bad guys whatsoever. And then add to that, you have a plot line that's a pretty generic Hitman movie plot line where our guy gets set up, and so he's out to try and figure out who's behind it and has to team up with a girl along the way, and she's not very likable either. Nothing really works all that well, so a dud. Also, if you're wondering why this list has 22 movies on it, it's because last night I double-checked to make sure I didn't make any mistakes with the box office numbers. And I had made a mistake in the box office numbers. Oops! Hitman actually made $2 million more than Street Fighter 1995, and I didn't want to cut Street Fighter 1995, so I stayed up late watching Hitman, and the list is just one movie longer. Next up is Assassin's Creed, a gorgeous looking movie with some very cool fight choreography, a fantastic cast, and a script I simply can't get into. Part of that is our lead character is entirely unlikable, and he has no clear motivation for why he's doing what he's doing in the story, at least not one that's compelling. The other big gigantic problem here is I simply don't find the concept interesting or engaging. It's actually the same reason I don't get into the video games at all. Because the story involves a character using genetic memory to live out these adventures in the past, it's just a person playing a video game in my mind, and that's not all that interesting to me. Also, as a movie that's all about free will, it doesn't have anything to say about free will while having stories that aren't free will based. And so a movie that it just doesn't work for me. Number 18, Resident Evil Afterlife. A slight improvement over Resident Evil Extinction for a few reasons. Right off the bat, it borrows from the best quite a bit and does a bunch of Matrix ripoff type stuff in the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. And then the middle section of the film is basically a ripoff of Dawn of the Dead, which is another great movie to rip off. So it's not a movie that delivers a lot of fresh original ideas in and of itself, but it does borrow from the best, and so it feels a bit more familiar. It's a bit more enjoyable and entertaining for me, but like most of this era of Resident Evil films, it's just kind of a lot of stuff happening, but not like a clear linear narrative from beginning to end. Very episodic in nature with the way the story unfolds. Then we have Resident Evil, the final chapter. Certainly not a great film, still a deeply flawed Resident Evil film, but at least the final chapter gave some answers to questions, had a clear objective, and came to an actual resolution. Now, the journey to get there is filled with some of the worst shaky cam, quick edit action I have ever seen. Some of it is utterly incomprehensible. Like I said, the saving grace here is that it does finally answer the questions we've kind of had about how did all this happen? What exactly is Umbrella's plan in all of this? And why are they trying to kill everyone after the apocalypse? And as you get to the end of it, it does close out the story, so it actually has a bit of satisfaction to it, while it still has the flaws of many of the later Resident Evil films. It's actually a complete story. Number 16, Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. Now, this is a movie that I actually liked it a good bit more when I watched it last year as opposed to rewatching it this year. The entire movie felt to me like they took a 2-hour and 30-minute movie and just squished it down. And instead of removing subplots that were unnecessary, they just decided to trim 25% out of everything.
Not a great plan.
So when it comes to the dialogue, when it comes to the action sequences, when it comes to just the flow of the story, everything just feels too squished together. The movie's filled with all of these traversing sequences where they're jumping through buildings, but it never pauses for you to enjoy the stunt work or the action that's taking place. They just have someone do something real quick and move on to the next thing without you even realizing that was actually kind of cool what just happened. Adding to that, our two lead characters are unlikable. They have no clear motivation. They're just two attractive people, so we're supposed to kind of like them for that reason, but we're just on an adventure with them. The time travel stuff can be used kind of nicely. There are moments that I do enjoy, but another one I simply didn't resonate with. Next up, Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life. A big part of the appeal of the original Lara Croft film was that it was a self-aware, campy adventure that was just a lot of fun. And this movie tries to have both all the goofiness of the original one, but it's also very self-serious and tries to do like this Romeo and Juliet, lovers on two sides of a battle plot line that they just don't go together very well, especially as the movie starts to come to a close and they want you to really feel bad when the tragic ending that tears the two people apart happens. Music begins to swell, and then the next scene is her just joking with someone else as if she didn't just have to make this horrible, tragic choice. The whole movie has that kind of contrast where it just doesn't come together.
Not impressed.
And it can't decide, are we doing serious movie or are we doing goofy movie with technology and over-the-top scenarios? And so one that I always think I'm going to like more than I do because it has Gerard Butler in it. And then every time I watch it, the story itself just doesn't pull me in. I don't buy into the relationship, and I certainly don't pay off into the melodrama of the finale. Coming in at number 14 is Warcraft. Now, this is a frustrating one for me because I think the idea of the story here is quite good. It's a little bit like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, where there's some real earned conflict with different groups with different value sets, but some bad actors in the mix throwing everything off. except without the finesse in storytelling or earning the moments like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes did. A big part of the problem here is that I don't find any of the human characters interesting or compelling. It's only the lead orc character that I'm actually all that invested in, like his journey, and feel the emotions with him. Every time it cuts back to the humans, I just want to go back to our orc character. But then as we move into the finale, he turns out to be fairly ineffectual in his quest, and it's a movie that feels like it was trying so hard to set up this big, gigantic franchise that it forgot to have a satisfying conclusion to this movie. So as you get to the big battles at the end, it just kind of took me to a place that was like, this doesn't work as well as I should, and it feels like it could have if they weren't trying to set up the sequel that it looks like we're never gonna get. Next up is Angry Birds the movie. Now this is one that as time passes, I like it less and less and less because my kids play it all the time and I didn't like it all that much in the first place. Now it has energy to spare and frequently uses pop music to kind of give it an extra burst of more energy, but a lot of times it feels like it's trying to use pop music to cover up for a lack of actual jokes or character development. Another big problem here is that our lead character, Red, isn't likable. Recurring theme in this video. He's just kind of an angry bird that doesn't kind of win you over to his side whatsoever. It has a very disjointed plot. As it turns out, a little app on your phone where you throw birds to knock over buildings might not be enough story to carry a 90-minute movie. Number 12, Street Fighter. Full disclosure, this is definitely a nostalgia placement and I'm fully aware of that. This is a bad movie, but a bad movie that I also thoroughly enjoy. It is campy to its core. It's over the top. The dialogue is trying so desperately to set up one-liners that most of them don't even make all that much sense. It takes a tournament fighting game and turns it into a plot about a terrorist organization and a reporter out for revenge and the military trying to sneak into the base. Kind of misses the entire point of Street Fighter. None of that matters all that much to me. It's goofy fun that I saw in the theater opening weekend, and I've been watching it ever since then. Certainly, Raul Julia is the standout here, as he is fully committed to his role in this film, even though he was actually dying of cancer while making this film, and he didn't shrug off from his performance at all. He's a lot of fun to watch in a movie that's not actually all that good, but one that I have fun with. Number 11, Resident Evil Apocalypse. Another one that I just have very fond memories of watching on loop back like 15 years ago when it first came out. This is basically like a live action Resident Evil cartoon with over-the-top stunt work, cartoonish villains, and a movie that knows it's pretty ridiculous. And as long as it knows it's ridiculous, I can get on board with all the wacky hijinks that are taking place. There's definitely more kind of cut-fu going on with the way the action is choreographed, but it's never dull. It moves at a quick pace, and it does something different from what the first film did. It developed it while still having a story that progresses forward. So for me, I can't really defend this movie. If you don't like it, it would fall into that Taco Bell category for me. I have fun with it. Bringing us into the top 10, Need for Speed. Whereas with Prince of Persia, I rewatched it and liked it significantly less. With Need for Speed, I rewatched it and actually liked it significantly more.
You did it! Congratulations!
Now, it is a movie with a deeply flawed story structure. The first 40 minutes, it's basically a prologue to the actual story that maybe could have been a movie in and of itself. And then when we get into the main plot line, there's a few kind of dangling plot threads that you're not sure where they were going or what they thought the payoff was there. But at its core, Aaron Paul can play a very sympathetic character. You can buy into him and root for him in these underdog type stories. And it's filled with practical stunt work with actual cars flipping through the air and driving very quickly through things. And so You care enough about the characters and you see cool stuff all along the way. So when you get to the end of it, it actually plays off pretty nicely. Or at least it did when I rewatched it in the year 2021. Then we have Lara Croft Tomb Raider, a campy, fun adventure film. Now, this isn't one that I necessarily have a bunch of nostalgia for. I don't even think I saw it in the theater when it first came out, but it is just a movie that knows exactly the type of experience that its audience wants, and it delivers that. A bunch of over-the-top action sequences that are actually memorable. You remember the sequence where she's dangling around, spinning around, doing these flippy things in her living room attached to wires. You remember her battling the robot at the beginning of the film, and that's what you really want from a movie like this, where the sequences actually pop. Of course, Angelina Jolie is just a blast in the role. She's, of course, a charismatic movie star in a movie that's designed for her to do charismatic movie star type things. So put it all together, not like a personal favorite or anything, but a fun time. Number 8, Mortal Kombat 2021. This one is frustrating for me because it was so close to greatness and then just kind of missed it with some odd choices. On the positive side, it's a rated R Mortal Kombat movie filled with bloody carnage and not in the British sense. There's fatalities, there's heads being cut off, limbs being severed, all the stuff you want from Mortal Kombat, you get it here. But the thing that holds it back for me is it's a movie all about the Mortal Kombat tournament that doesn't have the Mortal Kombat tournament. It's like the prequel to the thing that I actually want to see. Likewise, they made the lead character a new character, which is a very odd choice. And some of the characterizations are just dull and kind of forgettable, like Liu Kang, normally one of the leads that stands out. Not in this movie, at least not for me. Then Kano's cranked up to 11 like the actor was hopped up on cocaine. I do cocaine!
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Sub-Zero and Scorpion, their sequences are awesome and memorable. But then the lead character is this new guy he's fine. But I don't know why you would replace all these interesting characters like Johnny Cage with this guy.
Wow, that was weird.
Just a bunch of really odd choices where it's a mix of like awesome and huh? Number 7, The Angry Birds Movie 2. For me, this is a significant upgrade over the original film where they found a way to actually give this story a plot by making it kind of this spy heist plot line about them infiltrating this other island's base. They gave it an actual direction, forward momentum, and also along the way, there's some character development, twists, turns, reveals that make you kind of invested in these bird characters. Likewise, along the way, it can be pretty clever. Some of the jokes actually worked for me. They were fun. Now, it's not great family entertainment. It still relies too heavily on like pop music to interject energy into the story. But as someone who has a bunch of kids that love to put these movies on, I much prefer it when they pick this one over the original. Then we have the original Resident Evil. Much like Apocalypse, I have very fond memories of watching this movie on loop back over 15 years ago. And this is a film that feels very different from the rest of the franchise. Part of that is the close corridors environment of the entire movie where they're stuck in this one location. Likewise, it's mostly free from the excessive cartoonishness of the rest of the franchise. Starting with Apocalypse, things start getting pretty goofy with all the powers they give Alice and the wacky things that start taking place. This one, by comparison, is a lot more grounded. Likewise, it's like 40 minutes until the zombies actually show up. It builds tension, finds other conflicts before they're shooting the undead in the face. The standout sequence in this one was probably the laser corridor one. That's just a nice, memorable little moment. Might lean a little bit too much in on the horror and action movie cliches, but at the same time, it's effective enough at building some intrigue about the mysteries of who knows what's and why they're trying to do what they're trying to do. All in all, it's kind of like Paul W.S. Anderson's version of Aliens, minus the great characters, themes, and master storytelling. But if you're going to borrow from the best, he does a decent enough job here. Bringing us into the top 5 is Rampage, based off of a fairly obscure at this point in time 80s video game about gigantic creatures destroying buildings. Pretty thin on plot, but just enough there to create a new blockbuster starring The Rock. And it's enjoyable enough if you like movies about big, gigantic monsters battling each other and destroying buildings, and if you enjoy watching The Rock do his thing. Jeffrey Dean Morgan also shows up and just has a nice swagger throughout. He's a ton of fun to watch, but it's a movie that kind of, in general, lacks any kind of it factor. It's fun. I like the chaos. I'm not bored by it, but there's also nothing about it that distinguishes it from any of the other movies like this about big monsters punching each other in the face and destroying stuff. In 4th place, Tomb Raider, a solid enough adventure film that captures the visceral nature of the latest run of the video games, where it makes you feel like you're really in on the action. The cast here is solid all around, though the villain pretty generic. Some of the motivations here a tad questionable. Depending on your perspective, it has some nice homages to the Indiana Jones films, or maybe it rips them off just a little bit too much. Maybe it takes a little bit too long for the main plot to kick in, and it doesn't necessarily make its own distinct mark on the adventure genre, but it is a competently made adventure film that provides the experience that you want. It feels like a proper adaptation of the video game. I enjoy it, but most importantly, my wife likes it. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to share your ranking down below in the comment section. My list isn't the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also, if you're interested in my take on video games, here's a video right up here with my top 10 favorite video games of all time. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy that one too. In 3rd place, Mortal Kombat 1995, a delightful piece of 90s cheese, a movie that knows it's pretty goofy. It leans into that, and it just makes for a very fun experience. It's also a movie based off a tournament fighting game that's about a fighting tournament, something that Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat 2021 forgot about. Another thing I thoroughly enjoy about this film is it found a way to actually push the edge of what you can do with PG-13 rating. You have Scorpion ripping his mask off, revealing a skull, and then puking fire out of his mouth. So it actually goes for a little bit with the violence. Certainly, it's a movie that has its faults. The CGI is incredibly dated, but I think the practical effects actually look pretty good. In particular, Goro, he can't move much, but I think he looks really good. Just in general, a movie that works really nicely because it has so much 90s movies charm and nostalgia, and as someone that saw it opening weekend of the theater, I've always had fun with this one. Our runner-up is Sonic the Hedgehog, a movie that kicked off its marketing campaign with a trailer that enraged the internet. And then they actually won the fans back over by delaying the movie and redesigning Sonic to look the way Sonic is supposed to look. And then the movie turned out to actually be a lot of fun. A gigantic part of that is that Sonic himself is this big ball of naive, fun energy. He's so charming in his wacky adventures, and he has great chemistry with James Marsden, who's just very good in these types of roles. The other thing that makes this movie work is having Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik, and it feels like he has not skipped a beat from his heyday back in the 90s. He's back to the guy that made him this top tier actor comedian out there, doing his thing in a Sonic movie as a villain. Is just a lot of fun. It's a little bit weird that they decide to make a road trip movie out of a character that's the fastest creature alive. That aside, this is one that gets played in the Chandler household quite a bit because my kids love it, and one that I enjoy right along with them. But coming in at first place is Detective Pikachu, a film based off fairly obscure Pokemon video game from just a few years back that turns into an interesting little blockbuster. Of course, the weight of the movie is on the shoulders of Ryan Reynolds, who is just so much fun anytime he's playing a motor mouth character. This time is a cute little Pikachu that happens to be a detective. Adding into the mix, you have this noir plot line where they're trying to solve a mystery in this world filled with all these wild, wacky characters. It's just a fun environment to tell a story like this. Adding to the mix, helping things out, it has enough heart inside of it with the storyline about the son and the father, the reveals all tied to that just a nice little touch, but not overplayed. And finally, my kids are obsessed with Pokemon, so it's a movie that they love to put on all the time. And a key factor in how much I like a movie is if my kids watch it on loop, am I okay with that, or does it drive me insane? And in the case of this one, I'm totally okay if this is one of the things they decide to put on loop. So it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it, check out that video right over there with my top 10 favorite video games of all time. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.